when I was 27, I started my agency. I had £17 in my bank account and it was a ride. I thought at 27, I knew everything. I very quickly learned I knew absolutely nothing. And it's been a ride for the last 8 years. Anybody who works with our agency knows we're very honest and we're very upfront. And that's what we've tried to achieve with the women that we brought together for the last 3 days. When I first decided that I wanted to go into communications, I had spent a lot of time watching all kinds of films about events and marketing, The Devil Wears Prada, you know, all of the ones that make us think we're going into a career that just doesn't exist. You get maybe 2% of the glamour for 98% of the everything else you have to do for the job. But I was in, I was sold, and I was committed. And here we are, gosh, about 15 years later. We've got a really varied audience watching today, so we've tried to cater for everybody. I know we've got students on through to some of our clients, CMOs, marketing directors, managing directors, and everybody's joined to learn something different. So I think we've covered off a lot of what people want to know in the questions. I on Monday had written a whole thing about what I wanted to say at the beginning about what communications, marketing, events and everything else meant to me. And I guess being honest, the news cycle the last few days of the things going on in the US hit pretty hard, and I think a lot of people have been feeling it, and in a very strange way it's brought people together but also divided people, and I think that is what we've been talking about the last few days, is the power of communication. We've gone from highly glossed magazines and everything looking perfect into that world of Instagram that almost did it again and heightened it because it was on your phone, the thing that you spent the most time on. Then we've sort of started to come out the other side with big brands saying that they are not going to edit pictures of women and it's going to be real. And we went through that phase on Instagram of people saying real life, Instagram and everything else. But for me, the reason that I got into comms and communications was words are power, and how you use those words determines how people feel about you, feel about a brand, feel about everything that you build around something. And as we navigate through the challenges that we've got in the world right now, actually communications is about the truth. It's about telling the truth. Camera phones, everything else, they have removed people's abilities to put spins on things. And I think anybody who's in PR knows it gets really hard, let alone if you have celebrity rosters and everything else that happens, you know, the removal of that. And where we used to rely on traditional media and we would write a press release that would go out and you would get it almost a version of the story that you wanted. Now a star or a brand can put that message out first on social media and say exactly what they want. And if somebody doesn't believe what the press has said about it, they can go to the source that is just on their free Instagram handle. So we've really been unpacking that and exploring that this week. And today we have a really, really great lineup. I just want to hand over to Danielle for a moment to just do a quick intro about herself and the Bonita Project, because everybody should be following them. A really interesting agency working with some really great emerging brands from across the US.
Thank you, Charlotte. So hi, everybody. I'll keep my little spiel quick. But so for those that don't know me, the Bonita Project is it's a PR influencer marketing agency based out of New York City. My background in PR has always been in beauty PR. I've worked with beauty brands as big as L'Oreal Paris, Urban Decay, Garnier. Those were my former brands, right? I worked at an agency and I actually headed up their what we call here multicultural team, which I was never a big fan of. And I feel like there's still a lot of segmentation when it comes to like media markets and how and how we approach the consumer and whatnot. And anyways, fast forward in 2018, I was over it and I got really inspired to just launch my own agency. I'm Latina. I'm very, big on promoting and boosting the Latino community here in the US, but as well as also our other communities of color. So the Bonita Project was born as like a need to do things the non-corporate way, I guess you would say. And right now we currently work with a great roster of up and coming beauty brands. I have a few Latina owned brands in the hair space, in the curly hair space. As I'm sure you guys have seen, the curly hair movement has been a very big movement in in the last couple of years in the natural community as well. So I do have the pleasure of working with two great natural hair brands. I also work with a colorful Miami-based brand that was launched by a Cuban American based out of here. And then I also get to work with a Black-owned brand who has, and Charlotte and everybody got to meet with all these ladies yesterday. Because we had a panel on entrepreneurship and how to build your own brand here and starting from scratch. So long story short, that's what I do. I have a very big passion to, same as Charlotte, to really elevate the voices of the people around us, especially for the multicultural communities. And I'm so grateful that we were able to connect during the peak of COVID and create something so scrappy but so beautiful in like a matter of 2 weeks. We're like, let's get this together. And the response has been amazing. So again, Charlotte, thank you.
Pleasure. So today was meant to be about events and activations, and it is in a slightly twisted sense to what we originally thought it was going to be. And it's more around activating brands in all the different mediums, channels, platforms, everything else. So today I have 5 brilliant people joining me to talk about the things that they've done in brand, platforms, stories that have been told, different platforms that they use, how they've achieved success, and also to talk about the business that we're all in. So first up is Mo, Monique. So Mo is joining us today from New York. One of the best women that I know, operates on a completely different level, elevates a room, brings everybody together, has great conversation. Just before we went into lockdown, I was in New York, and myself and Mo and Fran, who was on the panel on Wednesday, headed out to see Celine Dion, which I can honestly say was one of the best nights of my life. People underrate Celine. She is a G. She owned that room. She was a vibe. And we had the best time. And then we went into lockdown globally. I think you guys went just before us in London, and the world obviously changed quite dramatically. And one of the really interesting things that came out from Mo's side of what she was doing with one of her clients, partners, Swizz Beatz, was they launched Versus TV. That has smashed records on a whole different level. And we will get into that in a little bit. But Mo, do you want to just give a quick intro on yourself?
Sure. Well, hi everyone. Nice to meet you guys virtually. Thank you, Charlotte and Danielle, for having me here. And a little bit about me. I just like doing dope shit. We got the okay on shit earlier, so
we're good on shit.
But yeah, I really just enjoy doing amazing things with amazing people, and I've been fortunate enough to have crossed paths with Swizz maybe about 17 years ago, and literally the rest has been history and magic in the making in real time. And Versus, which I'm sure we'll get into later on, has totally been sometimes, like even now, it's hard to find the words, because what everyone sees is real time, for real. Like there is no 6 months of planning and projecting and anticipate. Like everything you're seeing is in real time, from the issues to the good days to the bad battles to whatever you want to call it. But it's been good. So I'm fortunate to have that one on my scorecard, because it's a good one.
It's a really, really good one. And then we have Liv in the middle, Miss Olivia. So those of you who are watching who have worked with TFR for a number of years will know that Liv was our gal videographer. Lots of fun, shot all kinds of things for our clients, really random stuff. One of the biggest things she worked on with us was when we teamed up Rooty Boy with Shake Shack to launch a burger. And Liv shot all the content for that. It was incredible. And then one day Liv said to us, I can't work with you guys anymore. And I had a bit of a panic and said to Alex in my team, shit, what do we do? And he said, nothing. Liv's off to work on a secret project. Liv said nothing. Even when we dropped it, said, oh, could you just edit this for us? I can't, I'm not allowed to work on anything else. And we're like, shit, what? Literally, what is she working on? Fast forward some time, turned out Miss Olivia was working on she was the film director for Andy Murray's documentary that went on to be one of the most watched documentaries on Amazon Prime, which is phenomenal. And if you know Liv, she's so calm, so chill, just takes it all in her stride, but is absolutely brilliant at what she does. When I heard the news and I saw the premiere and all the pictures of the carpet, I was like, oh, that's my girl, like that's how you do it. So just, you want to give a couple of words on yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi everyone. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Just a caveat as well, it wasn't the most watched documentary across the whole platform. It was just in the UK. I don't want to, I mean, it might be now, I'll find out, but I don't know if I can take that just yet. No, I mean, it's for me, it's been a real whirlwind. So I set up my own sort of indie production house ahead of the general elections in 2015 with the sole aim of trying to engage first-time voters. And then I've gone in all sorts of different directions in terms of telling stories and creating content, but I guess it always comes back to sort of human-led, very provocative kind of stories, whether that's for brands, whether that's the stuff I did for you, Charlotte, and now most recently my first feature. But yeah, I mean, I guess we'll get into it a bit more, and I'll let you continue with the intros.
So next up is Steph. Steph is the founder of, I would say, every young woman's dream. And had this been around when I was young, I suspect I may have made different choices and I may have had a lot more confidence when I decided to outsource. So Steph's brand, and I apologise in advance, I also don't apologise at all, is called Fuck Being Humble. And I stumbled across Steph, it must have been about a year ago. The content is bold, it's truthful, it's everything that women, I think a lot of time we sit in these boardrooms and we sort of listen, it's like, no. And she kind of brings that out of you as to what you actually want to say. So when I discovered Steph, I then made it kind of mandatory actually for our execs at TFR to attend her events, to act as another level of empowering them, giving them confidence and pushing them to carry on living their best selves and always making sure that they're doing their best. Steph also has some very exciting news that we'll get into later on, but it's generally absolutely killing it and moved with her events onto virtual. You've got, is it one more next week in this series?
I am just regular. I feel like a webinar machine at the moment. I'm actually just doing them week on week. It's kind of the only way I get to connect with people right now. So it's pretty much weekly.
Okay. So do you want to just give a synopsis on Fuck Being Humble?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for the intro also. So I am the founder and author of the book that I've recently written on self-promotion as well. I set up Fuck Being Humble because I wanted to help people be unapologetically proud of their achievements. And there was a very stereotypical way of how professional development should be done. And I kind of wanted to challenge that. It definitely resonates with women immediately. But I just want to say that it's actually gender neutral and everyone is welcome. It just depends on whether you've got the fuck being humble attitude in you. But we'll get onto that in a bit more detail, I'm sure.
Perfect. And next up, we have the brilliant Pip. So Pip is a mutual friend, both of our best friends, and sits in the middle of our relationship. And probably for a good few years now, she has actively spoken about us to each other. And when we were looking at this panel and we wanted people who had done brilliant things in brand, I said to our friend Natalie, can I talk to Pip about if she'd join the panel? And Natalie said, yes. You crack on. So the first time I spoke to Pip on the phone, I was, in true Charlotte style, very excited because she was just a woman of brand and a woman of get shit done attitude. And when you hear a little bit later the Vita Coco story, you will understand why. And the interesting thing about that brand is launched in 2004 in America, launched in 2011 in the UK, and at the time coconut water was a drinks category. So they brought a drinks category and they made that product the number one in that drinks category. And we'll get into a little bit more on that in a moment. But Pip, do you want to just say a few words?
So I've had 2 decades of working across international sales, marketing, businesses. And I guess what I've certainly learned in my career is that it's changed. 2 decades of watching how marketing brands and how launching successful brands has changed, and really needs that authenticity in the middle or at the forefront, not the middle, is so important. So my background, so 2010 we launched Vita Coco Enya, which was the most incredible 10-year career. Felt like 2 minutes, but it was 10 years. And over the last 2 years, I've now been consulting and working with small startups, SMEs, to build the next phase of challenger brands out there across a range of different sectors. And aside from that, I spend quite a lot of time. I'm big on giving back, so I do a lot of mentoring as well of what I hope are tomorrow's new entrepreneurs.
Amazing. And last but not least, Miss Abby Gale. So Abby is the PR lead UK for Adidas. She, knows, well, she's worked with some of the best. So we've got David Beckham, we've got Pharrell, we've got Stormzy, just a few of the names associated with Adidas and a few of the incredibly brilliant parties that she has thrown in London and coverage that she has secured in big titles. So hello, Abby.
Thank you for that lovely intro. Yeah, I've been at Adidas for about 6 years now, for all my sins. I guess it's what you call a lifer. And I came from a background in sport and then transitioned over to Adi with that, and have fallen into the big, wonderful world of originals, fashion, and I guess the culture. But I think, I just feel very lucky to love what I do every day. And I think it's a testament to the brand I work with and some amazing people I get to work with every day in that, who've taught me everything I know, and I genuinely do learn from them every day. So yeah, we'll get on to some of the things we've gone through and how that's sort of grown Adidas. But yeah, great to be here.
Adidas have our dream TFR offices. I can't even describe. Their London offices are just on a different level. Like, I was like, am I in London? Am I in New York? It was just the show. Yeah, that's the goal. That's what we're working towards.
So one day we'll get back there. Hopefully.
Yeah. So we're going to jump into some questions. And as I said earlier, jump in if anyone's got anything to add. So, Liv, I'm going to start with you. We started talking to our clients in hospitality and lifestyle probably 4 years ago about film. Had quite a lot of pushback, wasn't the right time, or no, not yet. People were just getting the hang of Instagram. Then film kind of came, and then the podcast world started picking up pace as well. I remember watching a snippet from Gary Vee, and he was saying about how many pieces of content you get out of a podcast if you film it. And it kind of started to make our clients think back to, we should have film. And I think when we went into lockdown as well, a lot of brands realized that they didn't actually have any content. There weren't any actual assets that weren't perfectly polished pictures from their restaurants and their bars and everything else. And they were like, shit, what are we going to put out? How do we keep our brand alive? How do we continue having conversations with our guests? So what is it like being a woman in film? And generally, what is the film industry like? I think after Me Too, that's, all the things of Hollywood, what is it really like on a day-to-day?
Sure. Great question. So you're really just throwing me in there, Charlotte. So I can only obviously talk about my experience. And I'd say for the most part, it's actually been incredibly positive. I'd say, that could be for two reasons. One could be because I work alone quite often, and two is when I have had a team, I've normally surrounded myself with other like-minded women. Not actively, it's just ended up, the compatibility's just been there. But with regard to what it's like to be a woman in film and the experiences I've had, well, in particular, my last film, which just so happened to be, my first feature documentary, I have to say it was an incredible experience. And I think that there are, some advantages for women working in film that other women just don't have in their industries. And there are some disadvantages which I'll touch on. But to give you a bit of context for what I mean is the world that we live in now, the content that we're consuming means, and the amount of it means that we've been completely desensitized. And it's not necessarily anyone's fault. We're overrun with provocative content, and for instance, it takes a picture of a child to be washed up on a beach, or most recently, you know, the knee of a police officer in the back of someone's neck, for there to be, you know, the international outrage that these issues so deserve. They're happening on a daily basis, but we need to like see it. And as a filmmaker, it is your job, if you've been granted the opportunity to tell a story, to create a space where people feel safe enough to expose themselves, to be vulnerable, and share the emotions that we as audience members expect in order to be moved. And I think that personally, as a woman, it is therefore probably one of the only times that it's been useful to be oversensitive and too emotional, because the presence of a woman, you know, in making the film that I did, I was the only one that was filming. I was the only one that was in the room capturing the sentiment. And I guess none of us knew it at the time, but when I look back, I guess being a woman allowed my subjects to rid themselves of any sort of stereotypical masculine guard, and just open up. And I'm not quite sure that they would have done the same if I was a man. And I believe that that's why it was such a thought-provoking and emotional film. So that's an advantage. A disadvantage, I'd say, is, and it's actually more from a practical standpoint, and isn't just experienced by women, but the weight of the kit that I was having to carry around, set up, hunch over, for what was essentially an 18-month shoot, if I could, you know, put it in that sort of that perspective. You know, it didn't really work in my favor as a woman with literally no upper body strength, and I've actually completely screwed my shoulder as a result. Was it worth it? Yes. Am I going to drastically redesign the kit and try and work with people to make it sort of a bit more amenable to women? Yes.
Okay. And I guess, what's in the world of film, like a lot of our videographers are male, and we searched when we were looking for females. What's the ratio now? Are there more females coming through and taking up the role?
Not enough by any means. I think they're currently being shouted about sort of wider. I mean, like, well, I don't know if any of you guys saw the hit series Normal People that everyone's going mad about recently, but actually it was a woman that filmed. She was a DOP, director of photography. She filmed the entire thing, and I think people are starting to realise that you know, they're talented, just as talented as men. There are ways that they can lift equipment and be supported with a crew, but I think that we're only just touching the surface on introducing women into film. We've got a long way to go, definitely.
Okay. And Steph, fuck being humble. Very bold statement for a brand name, which we love. When you were thinking about the name, where did it come from? What were your values, pillars, culture? What was it to do? Because it's just really impactful words.
Yeah, I think it definitely channels my personal sort of personality and views. So I'm very much like, just get on with it, get shit done, go out and claim what your worth is. And, you know, I have a bit of a tough love, agony and attitude. And I actually remember at the time, so I absolutely love R&B and hip hop, predominantly from the 90s and noughties. And I was listening to a playlist that was like, you know, Missy Elliott, and it was even Gwen Stefani, and it was all these like amazing women that I've grown up with. And I was listening to their motivational talks, and also the way that rappers speak about confidence and getting that. And actually I felt like in order to cut through, I kind of needed to have an edge that people wouldn't expect, but actually they totally connect with. I actually remember at the time telling my friends that's what I was going to call it, and a lot of them were like, you might isolate people, you might put people off. And I was like, but I might also reach a big audience that need this. And I think I've worked in advertising for 7 years, and I know the power that brand storytelling can have for brands essentially, but also for individuals. And I think if you want to connect with individuals, you have to make them feel like they're part of the process. And I think Foot Being Humble intrinsically does that. And yeah, I kind of wanted it to be relatable and honest, and I try and do that with all the content that I do. So by no means do I tell people to stand on a chair and scream how incredible they are with absolutely no self-awareness. So full disclaimer, I do believe in being humble, and I do think that there are opportunities to be humble. I just don't agree with it overtaking the opportunities that you have presented to you.
That's really interesting, and I think really important as well, because, and actually one of the interesting things you said about hip hop, I believe hip hop is at the start of pretty much everything. It influences everything. People don't realize how much of their lives are shaped by what that genre and the culture does. So TFR, lines, swag, all the things we talk about is taken from hip hop, and almost that self-belief and all of the stories that go with people that struggled and came through. It's a part of the journey. I just don't think everybody thinks about it like that. So I love the fact that that has played a part in being humble, and I love the fact that you're telling people to live like that.
Totally. And I name all my events. So I run 3 events, which is How to Talk About Yourself, which I called Let Me Blow Your Mind by Eve and Gwen Stefani. The second one is Ain't No Shame, a lyric from Missy Elliott's Work It track. And that's all about how you network and overcome the shame of networking. And the final one on how to get the money you deserve is Bitch Better Have My Money. And again, it's all about that's one of the first things people say to me is like, I haven't seen professional development approached in this way, or like with that same attitude and kind of like non-serious approach sort of thing. So I think it's definitely helped integrate the beliefs and values into what other people want to connect with.
I think that's really good that you found that really clear synergy between brand name, what brand does, and how we engage with people using that. Like, I think people come up with a name and it's like, oh, I love the name. It's like, how does that play a part in the conversation and the narrative that you want to have with people? How does that empower? As people, as customers, guests start demanding more from brands, you're kind of perfectly sat as an example of actually living for your customer, your guest, knowing exactly who they are and what they need from you, which is really, it's really fantastic and really very forward.
I hope so. I hope so.
No, well, my team are all signed up, so who worked with me, and they're 10 years younger than me, so brilliant. And just on from that feeling of empowerment and doing your best thing, Mo, you're in one of the most wanted industries for young people to work in. And I think the second event that I went to that you were speaking at, you spoke about hanging around until the end of the night with your artist CDs to put them in the hands of the DJs when they were finishing. And that story has always, it stayed with me because, as I was saying earlier, now with social media and everything else, this desire for instant gratification and overnight success and everything else with a lot less of the hustle, because social media makes people think that it's easier and it's not. And you are an exact example of going out and getting the work done. So just coming on from what Steph's just said, people who are getting a lot of no's, who are trying to get into music at the moment, what advice would you give to them? And I guess, which we'll get into in a little while, but with Versus TV, what are the points of difference that people now want in music to make a brand stand out? We've been looking at a couple of bits around what the culture has done during lockdown. So if you take, I was going to do the funny voice, but I won't embarrass myself. Tory Lane's Quarantine Radio was the first big moment that the world went mad for. I mean, well, he was shut down for the twerking, I think. And then you had Travis Scott, who launched his new album in Fortnite, which was just mad. And then you guys came through with the Versus TV. What would you tell those people?
Normally I tell people who are getting constant no's to treat them as not right nows, because I've definitely been in situations where no's became yeses. I just was talking to the wrong people at the wrong people at the wrong time, maybe even the right people at the wrong time. So just don't get deterred by no, because timing's everything. I've been in situations again where I've even interviewed for jobs with people, and they were like, no, you're not the right fit, and then fast forward, they're asking me for jobs, or just you just have to know that just because it's a no from one person doesn't mean that what you're thinking or what you're creating isn't good enough or doesn't deserve the light. It just might not be with that person or at that time. So just keep going. That's my advice to a lot of people, because to your point, entertainment is highly glamorized. We work in an industry that is fully, it's fully funded on marketing. What you see is marketed. What you see is, created in a way to make you like it and to make you buy it and to make you spend money on it, and I think people lose sight of what the core is we create so you can spend, because we then make money from what you spend on. So it's like with entertainment, I always give people the analogy. I'm like, they're like, oh, what you do is so amazing. I'm like, but it'd be no different than me doing it for the CEO of Chase, or me doing it for someone who, like, it's the same principles. It's just the industry I do it for is just so propelled on this level that makes it seem so magical and all this glitz and glamour. And I promise you, it is hard. It's not easy working in entertainment just because it looks great. It actually, I've worked in other industries a lot younger in my career, and I'll be the first to tell you, it's hard. Like I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier today who's going through the effects of the pandemic and what it has done for her, because our entertainment industry is completely upside down right now. The bulk of what she did lived and concentrated in the live space, and there will not be live entertainment as we know it for at least another 8 to 12 months. Yeah. And that's just the reality. But again, just keep going. If you believe in your heart of hearts that what you bring to the table or what you're doing is something of value, then just keep on pitching it, keep on talking to people, and just, I always say, be respectful and kind to the people you're talking to, because I've been in situations where I might not have been able to help, but who was speaking to me, I felt something and was able to refer them to someone else who then could help them.
Yeah.
And in terms of just like, I'll be honest, Versus is a gift that keeps on giving, that just came from an idea. I missed the first Versus. Swiss is on the West Coast, I'm on the East Coast, and he functions very late at night, which is even later at night for me. And I didn't watch the first one. I woke up to people messaging me going, oh, that was so cool. And I was like, oh, all right, I gotta check it out. And then fast forward, what it's done for artists who weren't at the forefront of the conversation, at minimum, I feel good about.
Yeah.
What it's done for catalogs that people weren't listening to, at minimum, I feel good about. The nostalgia it gives people and how it takes them back in time to what songs meant to them when they first heard those songs, or what they connect those songs to, is a good feeling. So I think for me, what pandemic has done, I just hate referring to it as that, but what this time has done is it's just allowed us the opportunity to just be thankful for what we already had. Because I think we got into a rhythm of just wanting so much more, and what's the next thing we can make, and what's the next big thing, and how can I be greater? When the reality is we were great already. We were already in a space of creating history, but we just got on this train that was going so fast that we just were just like, even myself, I would do great things and would just already be so knee deep in the next thing that I needed to get done that I wouldn't even congratulate myself. So even hearing Stephanie and where I'm like, damn, I definitely do not give myself enough credit for what I do. Like being in Versus, I can't even enjoy Versus because I'm already planning the next Versus. But then now I'm a teacher, right? Because I have homeschool. Then I'm a chef because we cook now and we're scared to eat out. So there's all these things that have like been in the way of me just tapping or, patting myself on the back. So yeah, it's just, I think a good reminder of, we do great things and our potential is limitless, and to be conscious of that and be good to yourself,
Yeah. I think what you've just said there, we always say to our clients, millennials love to remember. And as I said to you guys earlier, as soon as I saw the Nelly versus Ludacris, I was like, oh my God, Nelly and Kelly dilemma, high school breakup song, Jagged Edge, let's get married. What a vibe. Like that was just what I think probably some of the best years of my life. I associate with those artists and those songs. So it was a real moment to watch those battles. And actually just going on from that to Abby, obviously you are the PR lead for Adidas, who is definitely a brand embedded in culture. And obviously on the original side, going back to Run DMC, my dad is, I think my dad is 63 and he will wear Adidas 3-stripe original trainers, and my 19-year-old sister will equally wear them. And somewhere along the lines, like Adidas Originals found a way to utilize the culture but bridge the gap, because anybody wearing those kicks feels like a cool person. A bit like what Mo is saying, like you've got youngins tuning into Versus now that wouldn't have heard those songs before but understand the legacy of those artists. So just from what Mo just said about everything moving quickly, how does Adidas stay at the front? Like, how do you guys stay forward with the talent that you bring on, the campaigns that you do? You guys have now got Beyonce, you've got Kanye. There are big names selling big units. Yeah. How do you pick that talent and consistently relevant? All of your socials, everything is bang on point for what people want.
Do you know, I think so much of it does go back to that heritage, and a lot of it comes down to the brand identity thing. And without wanting to go too much into what marketing spiel is, we're a heritage brand and a creator brand, and that's how it pushes forward, because you always look back to those moments that started it, whether that is a product that is the running shoe where we first began, or whether it's Run DMC. Everything we do is a recreation and a build on where that came from. So in coming with that, a lot of what I think is particularly relevant now and moving forward is to stay relevant. It's all about the communities now. And yes, you have the big names, and you work with Kanye, you work with Stormzy, amazing people who are so true to what the brand believes in and bring that out. But now it's so important to be so integrated into communities. And I think in London particularly, we have an incredible opportunity with that, whether that's in music or whether that's in art or photography or videography. By bringing them into the brand and making it authentic and working with them, and we try not to dictate too much creativity from us and look to people outside of that to bring it in, and that informs then what we're doing. And in through that's how you find working with the new talent and the best people. And everything you see on Adidas London Instagram channels is created by creators in London, not by a brand creative team behind a lens in Germany. Obviously the direction comes from that and the inspiration and the belief of it, but we feel empowered to hand that over to young talent and creatives. And I think even working with the bigger names, they're really on board with that, and we like bringing them into that conversation too, and being like, who do you want to work with, who do you care about? And I think you've seen, I know we've spoken about this at length before, Charlotte, one of our favorite topics, but Stormzy does such amazing stuff for the community, and that's a massive passion point to him. And I think it's things like that are testament to, you want to build on it. It's not just a brand and you're not just selling shoes, it's actually so much about the identity and what you can get out of that. And it does change so much. I mean, when I started 6 years ago, Instagram was barely a thing. I really remember being at my desk when Instagram stories came in, however many years ago that was too, and being like, why would you use this? What's the point? And I think we are still moving in on that. And I think we touched on it in some conversation, but TikTok, I don't use that yet. I'm aware of it and I know what goes on in it, but I think that just shows testament to how quickly it's moving. And if you're not integrated with the community who are using it so much, which is a young, creative and engaged audience, then you're never going to learn from it. So it's a long-winded way of saying, I think it's just embed yourselves in the community that's around you and listen to the people who are telling you what you want, and that can inform then what we do from a product point of view, but also what we do from an activation point of view.
That's, I think, in terms of brands, knowing their communities and owning their communities, again, coming back to the current news cycle, it was really interesting. I think it was today, several people went onto their Instagram stories and started calling out brands that had utilized Black culture, urban culture, and weren't speaking out about what was going on within the community at the moment. And it was quite a strange thing to think that we as humans now are so invested in these brands and have bought so much into how these brands position culture and lifestyle choice in front of us, that we believe that they should then be coming out and talking on real, very real issues. And, you know, people are obviously upset that people have utilised certain cultures, particularly Black culture, but then don't speak on behalf of the people. And it was for me, it was quite interesting. I was like, okay, there's that deep belief in these brands so much that they want you to come out as big brands and speak on those things. And it was quite interesting to watch it play out on social media, this demand for this conversation. And, you know, Adidas is one of those brands that's cultivated an incredible community and does lots for charities and communities. And it's going to be interesting to see how this authenticity and this expectation of brands continues to evolve, because I think people want more and more. The more and more of a lifestyle you sell to them, the more and more they expect you to be 360 in what's going on in the world and commenting on the news cycles and everything else.
Yeah.
And that takes me over to Pip, actually, and the real side of brands. I guess we're now in a world where everybody wants transparency, everyone wants inclusivity, everyone's talking their real, and then just coming back to that biggest point, their actions don't always match what they're saying and the principles that they've set out. When you guys were building Vita Coco, you really landed all of your key messages. People really believed that drink was going to make them healthier, going to do all of these things to their body that was going to give them more energy, they were going to function better, everything else. How did you, I guess, from a drink perspective, next day, what stuff from a culture and a lifestyle choice, how did you guys build that relationship with your communities?
So I'll back up. I guess in our industry, food and beverage, the first challenge you have is that we have very, very strict regulations in terms of what you can and can't say, and therefore as a brand you have to very much stand up against those. I think, you know, timing was of the essence with Vita Coco when we launched. Everybody had been talking healthy, not everybody was acting healthy, and all of a sudden those who were being healthy were typically looking at their food but not looking at their drink. And so there was an amazing sort of movement towards people also wanting healthier drinks. And as part of that, we had a very, very clear, transparent messaging strategy in terms of what the brand stood for, what we would message across all of our platforms. And what the authenticity of the brand came from where the brand was born. We're a brand that was born on the beaches of Brazil. And that ran through everything we did. So we're a very irreverent brand. We are a very laid back brand. You know, we're probably an office where if you come in the middle of the summer, the CEO is sat in a pair of shorts and flip flops with his feet up on the table. It's authentic. And in everything we did, we were humble, authentic. We never tried to be anything. We were almost goofy in a funny sort of way. I remember going to a first meeting at Waitrose, and the buyer at Waitrose said, "You have to be kidding me. You think I'm going to put that pack on the shelves of a supermarket? That's never going to sell." And because of various relationships, she said, "I'll give you 4 months, and if it doesn't work, it's out." And, you know, it was disruptive. It was true to the brand positioning. It did what it said on the pack. We weren't trying to be anything else. You know, it's water from a coconut. You can't get much more simple than that. And so in everything we did, it was simple, 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 but the heritage of the brand came through. And also we were a brand that continually surprised and delighted. So, you know, we did a lot of activation, a lot of experiential activity. We would be a brand that on the 1st of January, or, you know, the first working day back in January, where everybody's going back to work and it's sleeting and cold, and you know, you're getting off the Northern Line thinking, I've got a year ahead of me. We'd be the brand dancing around bright yellow at the stations, trying to put some life back into the drudgery of going back to work. So we were always the brand that popped up, and we called it surprised and delighted. In terms of the authenticity as well with our influencers, we were very, very, very specific about who we would and wouldn't work for. I probably turned away more influencers that came to us wanting to be with the brand than the other way around. And we only ever worked with people who were true consumers of Vita Coco. And we were very lucky. People came to us saying, I'd love to do brand collab stuff with you. If it worked for us, if it was authentic, if it was going to be organic, then yes, we would work together. You know, Rihanna's a great example. She drank Vita Coco. We delivered Vita Coco to Rihanna through Live Nation around the world, years and years and years ahead of her being part of the brand. No different to Madonna. Madonna came to us, she wanted to be an investor in Vita Coco because at the time, Tracy Anderson was training her, and it was during the time she was doing the Sticky and Sweet tour. And I don't know if anybody's ever seen, I don't know if you've ever seen it. I mean, last time obviously poor old Madonna fell off the stage, but when she was doing the Sticky and Sweet tour, she was incredible. She'd do a whole song, Dose to Doing, and everybody was like, how does she keep so fit? How does she hydrate through her set? She's nuts. And of course she was drinking Vita Coco, and Tracy Anderson said, we're drinking so much of this stuff, you should invest in it. And then a conversation came together. But always our influencers, our ambassadors were true drinkers and true brand champions for the brand that delivered that authenticity.
And one of the things that you said to me on the phone the other day, we were talking about how you influence the influencer. And I think you said about if there's a celebrity that you want to get to, you gift the celebrity's hairdresser. Is that...
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, again, being really open, when we launched in EMEA, you know, we were a startup. Like, we started the business from a back bedroom in Southfields, two of us, blank desks. And it's like, right, we better launch this product, or as it was, as you've mentioned, Charlotte, it was a whole new category. And I had no money. We got Vita Coco in year one to a £2 million brand, and I spent £55,000 on marketing. I didn't have any budget whatsoever. But what we did do is we were really focused on our audience, and we made sure, I always say, I mean this in this nice way, we acted like stalkers. We made sure that in our target audience, we were everywhere they were, Monday to Friday, Saturday to Sunday. If they were going to Ibiza on holiday, that's where our consumer went. We made sure that in Ibiza, at all the best parties during the summer. So we moved with our consumer. I couldn't afford to have him to sign up influencers. I also, at the start, you have to, as Abby touched on, you know, Instagram was just starting. And also, because we're an authentic brand, because we're an organic brand, we never wanted to be a brand that was seen to be paying influencers to say, hey, drink this product. And so I couldn't get to a lot of people. And so what we did is we created what we called, you know, lots of people do it now, but back in the day, not many were doing it, but it was the influencer strategy, which was basically, you know, how do I get it into the hands of an Elle Macpherson? Well, she spends a lot of time having her beautiful hair done every day and her makeup. And so what we did is we influenced her hairstylist. And then obviously, Elle must have at some point said, what's that you're drinking? The hairstylist told her, and all of a sudden Elle's team is calling every time she's coming into the UK wanting deliveries. And we did that across a lot of sectors. We did that in fashion. So again, you know, I couldn't afford to you know, partner up with London Fashion Council. So what we did is we built the relationships months out before February and September fashion weeks, working with the individual designers. So as they were getting to that real sort of crunch point of getting their collections together ready for their fashion weeks, we would be hydrating them, saying, hope the collection's going well, here's some hydration to keep you going through the long night. And we became friends, these people, and so we were then like, okay, at Fashion Week, would you like fridges backstage? So we were backstage, all the models, and then we were like, would you like them on the front rows as well? So we infiltrated that way. And then eventually, I mean, we got away with it for quite a long time, and then eventually, you know, too many people start to do it and it gets harder. But yeah, we're very much the hustler brand. We're very much the disruptive brand. We did a lot of social listening. We'd surprise and delight all the time. I had a hit team of brand ambassadors. So one of the things, we always hired our own brand ambassadors. I didn't use agencies for that. They were true Vita Coco consumers. And our brand ambassadors would go off and do surprise drops. You know, if there was some big opening somewhere, you know. Probably, Abby, I've probably hydrated a few of your launch queues in London when you've got new ranges launching and people are queuing down Oxford Street to get in and get the first cut off the rails. Then we would hydrate those queues. If those were where our consumers were, at those sort of places, we would be there. So we were always surprised and delighted.
It's really interesting. And actually, then just on that point, Pip, Abby, to you, you know, you guys have Stormzy, Run DMC, Mair, lots of big names associated with the brand. How did you guys, what was your model like, Pip, in terms of influencing influence that's going to make those people want to work with Adidas over a Puma or a Nike? Why? Because I think as well, you know, I see what you guys did, like with Mair birthday party. You were there, you were part of the conversation with McDonald's, and there was this true belief that there was this absolute unity between the brand and the person, as opposed to a celebrity being paid millions to just sort of pose in it, put it on Instagram and put #ad. What was your version of what Pip has done to cultivate these relationships that people want to be with Adidas?
I think it's more of a combination. I think with Adidas particularly, it's like aligning on the same values, and I think it's less of an approach, and it's more just knowing that kind of that what often happens, whether it's big names or smaller names, is that people grow up with the brand. And I think, Charlotte, you're one of them, right? You've always worn Adidas shoes, and sometimes it's just inherently part of you. And I think now that where Adidas is not just a sports brand, and we go through all the entertainment side of it, but also now in sustainability pillars and all of that, there's a lot more characteristics and touch points that people care about, which then makes us naturally aligned. So it's not all, you know, it's not about money and having to put #ad, it's actually about things people care about. Sustainability being a massive one of those at the moment. So yeah, I think particularly with some of those bigger names, it's just been a natural affinity that perhaps from grassroots of them before they were big names, that's where relationships start. We have an amazing hit team in every country and every major market, which dedicate all their time, much like scouts dedicate their time to finding footballers age 19. There's a lot of people who invest a lot of time in nurturing those relationships from before they were what they were, and understanding them and knowing when they want to work with them, and not making it's never, from where I've worked in it, it's never felt like a force or thing, just like, oh, we need a face to this campaign, go buy it. That's not what it's about. It's who makes sense for this, who would bring it to life in a way that they would want to be part of it, but we also want to work with them. So there's a lot of alignment, and then just a lot of groundwork in just nurturing those relationships. And I think it's the same with anything, whether it's a talent name with a brand, whether it's media, whether it's like a relationship with a sports person, or whether you're an agent to a sports person. I think so much of it is built on years and years worth of that relationship and understanding like where you want to work and what space you want to work in, how that can be aligned. I think we look to things at the brand which perhaps would make sense for that person. So we'll bring them into that conversation rather than it kind of being a plug and play, like, yeah, we need that, put it in. I think it's like, what do you want to be part of that we can bring to it? And it's a two-way relationship. So I think that, but yeah, there's a team of people who for a lot of years, and it started off, you know, there was the entertainment team back 20, 30 years ago, and the guys who started it all, there's years and years of relationships. And then from that, I think going back to communities, some of the people you work with originally, they bring in their family, and they're like the people they've worked with all along, and that they want to bring into the conversation. And then it becomes that. I think, I don't want to use the word family to make it sound like in a cheesy way, but it does. We often refer to it like that. And, you know, I make jokes about being part of the Addy family, but that's because it kind of is, because you just end up being this network of amazing people, whether it's who you're working with day to day in the office, or on a broader scale of talent, of entertainment team, or the sports guys. You do kind of find that natural affinity.
I think I'd say, Charlotte, as well, there's that big thing around that values alignment, but also as successful brands, they create tribes. Adidas has a tribe. Vita Coco had a tribe. I mean, I went through a period, so we infiltrated the yoga scene very early on, and if you ever came across a yogi who drank Vita Coco, I mean, they literally would have you in the corner telling you everything about why it was so amazing, because it was their brand, and it was like they had discovered it. They were almost evangelistic about it. And I think, you know, brands, those real long-term brands, they you'll get your evangelists at the beginning, and they work through time with you, and and they come full circle, and they bring other people on. The amazing yogis are to the front of the class when they were drinking Vita Coco. People like me who could hardly touch my toes, I'd be thinking, oh well, I must get Vita Coco. If these yogis are drinking it and they're amazing yogis, then I should get it as well. So you sort of create the hype and the buzz, and then it builds into, they do the work for you. Our yogis used to do our marketing for us.
Brand belief is so important. I guess there's so many routes to market now to have conversations with your customer, your guest. There's so many ways to have them believe in your brand, which I think Steph is a great example of. And Fuck Being Humble just feels like this movement for everybody. What have you done, Steph, to cultivate, what's your version of the culture for Fuck Being Humble, in the same way that Abby's is at Adidas and Pip's was at Vita Coco?
I think you both make really interesting points. And actually, as they were saying that, Charlotte, I feel like maybe you're one of my evangelist promoters
Really
that go around and champions the platform. I think for me personally, it's always, I ran a workshop this week about building a brand and how you do that in an emotional way. And I think one of the things that you get taught quite early on in branding is like finding the monster that you want to tackle or challenge or whatever that is. And usually people have a shared view on that monster. So for me, I wanted to tackle the fact that professional development is usually led by white, middle class, stuffy old men wearing suits, and I wanted to show that there's a different space and there's a different type of voice that can be heard when it comes to professional development, and doing it like everyone said in a really authentic way, so it feels natural. So when I see celebrity memes of like a picture of their face really happy, and then it's like checked my emails, had a shower, all of that, I've started making memes about self-promotion, and people are really engaging with that. And it's kind of like, as you said, I think you said it perfectly, Pip, about stalking their lives and being part of their lives. I actually don't think it's about doing your market research. I think it's about doing your lifestyle research and actually getting involved with their lives and integrating yourself that way. Because ultimately we're competing with so many different things now. There's so much more that we're competing with to gain their attention. So I think it's been a combination of, like we talked about, of like a brand that is very pokey and catches everyone's attention, but then also the content that people really need. And something I found a lot when I went to events was that you'd hear lots of inspirational things, go home and just go watch Love Island or MTV Cribs or whatever it was, and never really action those things. So that's why I run workshops where you literally leave with a piece of paper of why you are amazing and why you need to go tell people that. So sometimes it's about looking at how you can challenge the existing model to make it more suitable to the needs of your audience. And actually, a lot of the time, that's just by listening to what they're complaining about.
Yeah. And I guess that's from Mo's side, that's exactly what you guys did with Versus TV, is that you knew your audience so well, and the platform changed. The live shows were gone. What do revenue streams look like? We have, between, I can imagine, Swizz Beatz and Timbaland, a huge audience. And then you have the drive that comes from black culture, hip hop, the music scene. And you guys repackaged something that people wanted in exactly the right time and exactly the right space that they wanted to watch. I mean, from watching how you guys built the authenticity of that, I think, was it 5 weeks to 1 million followers on Instagram for the Versus channel? Mm-hmm. Which is like, when you think how long brands take to build those numbers, you have the exact authenticity, the exact conversation, exactly what the people wanted to hear at the time. What's that process been? Because I guess you guys have to kind of keep getting bigger, keep mixing it up, thinking who's perfectly aligned. Because I mean, the Beanie Man one, the weekend, I think it was the weekend before, was just a vibe and was just so lively. How are you guys working through that? Because there's authenticity and then there's people's expectation. How are you managing that to keep that rhythm going, that people are tuning in and you're crashing Instagram with 4 million viewers?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part, is balancing what the people want versus what we think will be, at this point, good television from a digital standpoint. We get recommendations. All of our timelines at this point are just, you should do this person versus this person and that person versus that person. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah, you grab Beyonce and you call Rihanna, you guys connect, let us know that they're on board, and then let us know, because it's that easy, right? Because there's a lot of variables that play into us getting to who's going to be in the next celebration. You know, you'd be surprised. Everybody doesn't want to show up. Everybody doesn't feel like they have the right songs to show up. Yeah. Everybody doesn't feel like, you know, like there's all of these, you know, bits and pieces that as the fan, like turn the lens around, as a fan, you don't imagine or assume, because to you, they're like, oh, well, they're a superstar. Why would they not? You'd be surprised. Some of the biggest superstars aren't as confident and as secure as you think they are. You know, you're talking to people who have hits and number ones, and they're telling you, I don't know, I mean, I'm just not sure. I just don't know if people will get into it. I'm sorry. You were my soundtrack for 6 months when I was either on a high or on a low. Are you kidding me? But again, you'd be surprised. So we're literally juggling everything from ego to expectation to all of these different things, again, in real time. We've put some of the best pairings together, and then there's a rainstorm, and then the Wi-Fi doesn't work. We can't control that. You know what I mean? Imagine planning an event, because, you know, we've done events in the past. So event planning is just event planning, right? We can apply that principle to this. But when you have variables that you can't control, you can't throw a tent up on Instagram and stop the rain and then it works. No, you can't do that. So there's variables that then just can completely turn the whole car, and you're sitting there for an hour and a half going, oh my goodness, why is the sound like this, when you've done 4 sound checks, right? Yeah. So you've done 4 sound checks, you've tested everything you can think of, you sent everyone all the equipment they need, and then, oh, someone decided to shift the box that was running the equipment through, and I'm on the back end Zoom call going, guys, does anyone not hear the hum? No, we don't hear the hum. Okay, turn the phone down, step out of the battle for a second. Let's troubleshoot, because there's 300,000 other people who are trying to enjoy this and hear what I hear. You know, so it's just like all of those things. And then it's like, you're growing a brand that's the combination of 2 other brands. So we also have to be sensitive to Swiss and Tim. And then when it goes wrong, how it affects them, right? And their brand, because everyone is just like, oh, well, you guys have enough money, why don't you start your own platform? And, oh, okay, yeah, because we're in the midst of pandemic and we have time to stop what you like, because God forbid we take a day off, because people want battles every day now, right? So we're programming content virtually and not in the same place for everyone to enjoy, which we love, right? Never take it away. We love the excitement that people get. Even amidst the chaos, we love it. But then you want them to build a new platform. People already don't change pattern for however long it takes them to change pattern. So you want us to build a platform. Hopefully you come to this new platform to watch what we've created. Because, I mean, I'll be honest, I can go on Instagram and say, oh, let me get off and go do something productive, and end up back in the app. I'm like, how did I get back here? So we already are dealing with a culture who's just where they are and comfortable with where they are, while trying to program with what we have to make it great week in and week out. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's trial and error. There is no system for what we do. There's no right, there's no wrong. We put battles up, and you'd be surprised how many people, rather than be happy about seeing their favorite artist, imagine you don't pay a dime.
Yeah.
You get to watch your favorite artists play their favorite songs in as raw form as possible. You hear stories about how the songs come together, and then there's people who still complain about watching the 2 people. Oh, I would have totally wanted to see. Oh, I'm sorry. You know?
You've spoiled us at this point. You have spoiled us. The lineup just got better and better every week. And then 2 for the Memorial Day weekend as well was just...
And that wasn't even, to be honest, there wasn't even supposed to be any shows that weekend. And I said to Phil, I said, well, you know, people are on their home, but then this is a holiday weekend, so let's give them something. That something turned into 2 things that then, you know, so it's just like, you're moving on the fly. Our teams are frustrated. Imagine finding out Wednesday you have a show Saturday in another country, not even in the States, so you can overnight FedEx. we couldn't even get the equipment to Jamaica. So we had to pray that they had enough to give us the show, and thankfully they did.
What's next for Versus TV? Like whenever we enter our new normal, it's just going to keep rolling?
I mean, there's different ideas. We've been approached by a lot of different companies, you know. The interesting part is you aren't watching new talent. You're watching talent that you've seen just in a different format. We've never seen two talent at the same time unless it was like a duet or a song on the same stage. So you're actually watching two artists at the same time perform, so to say. You know, so there have been a lot of conversations around what this could look like in the live space. Fast forward, what does this look like when outside does open, but there is still no entertainment, right? So how does that then shift a bit? Do we start producing these more? Like what you're seeing is literally people at home hoping that their dial-up doesn't give out, you know? So what does it look like when they're in a room with some, you know, strong Wi-Fi, a couple of producers, a couple of technical engineers? How does that feel? But then in its rawest form, you know? We were nervous. We didn't know how people would receive Beanie and Bounty in the same room.
Yeah.
You know, and people love it. Now they're like, oh, we never want to see people not together. Oh, okay. So now we have to ask people to break quarantine so that they can
they could be together.
That you love, you know?
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot of war room conversation and trial and error and just seeing what works and what doesn't. You know, there's some companies who have the luxury of figuring out that something won't work before bringing it to public. We don't have the luxury, you know, like we publicly get things wrong because that's the only place we can really test it. We didn't know that we could only get 511,000 people in the room when we redid Babyface and Teddy.
Yeah.
You know, people were blowing their hats because they couldn't get in the room. But that wasn't a versus, like we just didn't know. No one knew.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's its own animal and we're just keeping up with it.
Yeah.
Good.
Well, it's a great animal, and it was so authentically done. It was so the brand thing that everybody needed, with some incredible storytelling and some absolutely banging tunes. Just on from that, Liv, just what Mo's said there about managing egos, different personalities, and everything else. Being on set with one of the most successful sportsmen in the world. What was that experience like? Because I guess you're capturing a person's essence, you're capturing their brand authenticity and taking it and putting it straight into content for people to watch on Amazon, you know, a pretty huge streaming platform. What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I mean, really tricky, and I felt myself quite conflicted internally for quite a lot of it, because when you are filming, firstly, when you're filming someone going through something emotional, you have this sense of guilt that you're almost going to exploit it, because your job there is with a camera and to hopefully sell this as a product, and it feels horrific. But in the same vein, you know, the project was Andy's idea. He approached me, and I think that makes a difference. I think in terms of managing things, I didn't really have to manage anything. You know, Andy was focusing on what he had to do at the time, and I was just in the background filming it. And I think where I maybe gained his respect and he began to open up more for me, and the film became kind of a true emotional journey, was the fact that I just showed up every day. So, I mean, it touches a bit on what Abby said before about being so in tune with your subject or your brand or your client and prioritizing that relationship over the end result. So Andy knew continuously that if at any point he didn't want to film anymore and shut down the entire thing, I would be fine with that, and I genuinely would have been fine with that. But I knew that he wouldn't have done that, but him knowing that I would have done that meant everything. And and also, you know, his goals became my goals. I never asked for anything in return. You know, I was wholeheartedly part of the journey that he was going on, and I would have given it all up in a heartbeat, as I said, had he asked me. And I think that meant that he trusted me and he wanted the best for the film and for me, and it just kind of reached another level.
Okay. Whenever we're doing things, I said on Wednesday when we were doing the publicist panel, I actually wanted to be a celebrity publicist, and I did 3 events for celebrities, and I was like, I'm going to brands. I was like, I cannot do this. This is too personal, and this is too. There's all these people, you know. On Wednesday we had Vanessa Anderson on, who's Issa Rae's publicist. She's worked on the Beyonce Homecoming, and she worked on the Fenty Rihanna show that I think went on to Amazon. And she was talking about, well, you've got the talent, then you've got the agent, then you've got the manager, then you've got the publicist, then you've got the friends, the cousins, that make up this big circle around this person, and they almost represent what that person's brand is, if that makes sense. That's the authenticity of that. It's who that, oh, my mum travels with me everywhere, or my dad comes to all my live shows, and that whole ecosystem and how that comes together was what the girls were saying was helps make up the brand. That's also the authenticity of who that person is. And that was a really interesting insight. And the publicists were talking about how they navigate through that with so many different people involved. From the sounds of it, Andy was pretty breezy.
Yeah, no, he was. I mean, he was just so distracted with what he had to get on with. I think he often forgot that I was there. And I think because originally it was never meant to be a feature documentary that was going to end up on a platform like Netflix and Amazon, and that's kind of the beauty of it as well, because it meant I had sole creative freedom, which I'm not sure I would have got had they been part of the process from the beginning. But just on that, Amazon's an interesting one, because I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I don't know that they necessarily got like a brand identity. And I don't know whether that's something they're just slowly evolving, but like, for instance, I mean, they saw the film and then bought it. They had no creative input at all. And I know for a fact it would have been different with Netflix. And I just find that quite remarkable. They seem to just be like grabbing loads of things and seeing if it sticks. And then maybe when they know what sticks, they'll go off in that direction and then just jump onto something else. And it's mad. But like you said, I did have to appease everyone that was around, you know. Andy, and actually a team member of his physio was so anti a documentary being made. I mean, he was certain that I was going to manipulate the footage just for dramatic purposes. And I realised that what I needed to get them on my side was to basically guarantee that I'd show them the whole film before I made them sign a release form.
Okay.
And I mean, so I was on my own filming for about 8 months before I ended up collaborating with a big producer. And when I told him that I'd done this and I hadn't already got their release forms at the beginning, I mean, he literally wanted to throw me like against a wall, because that's not what you do. And I was just like, I don't care. Like, these people are willing to show everything. You know, I was there for like 12 hours a day at a time. You've got to give them something back. Like, you can't just take everything all the time and expect them to be okay with it. So yeah, sorry, my rant's over.
No, you're fine. I think though, I'm like, now, you know, documentaries, short docuseries, everybody's like, is this real? Isn't this real? Has this been scripted? And, you know, we can thank the Kardashians for that. I mean, I was like, back in the day, The Simple Life, like Paris and Cole was my absolute favorite thing ever. And the Kardashians came along and just took it to a whole new level. My friends watching know that I'm a very committed Khloe Kardashian fan, and I guess that's the thing. Our TV is manipulated exactly what they want us to see, and his is clearly not that. It is clearly a journey. And it really does show who he is in terms of the brand and the authenticity and the process. So yeah, no, well, I mean, feature on Amazon Prime and Netflix is pretty incredible, Liv. Really, really good. Quick question, I'm just gonna pop in because I was talking to a client about it this morning, and again, my friends and clients watching know this is what I keep talking about. How, when we talk about things moving quickly and new platforms and everything else, where are you guys with OnlyFans? I think it's going to become one of the next mainstream platforms. Obviously, at the moment, people think of it as a porn channel or whatever else, but you've got women on there making hundreds of thousands of pounds a month, and you've now got artists dropping albums and things exclusively into their rooms. Do you think that's going to be something?
I do think it has the potential to be something, and I think what it does is it takes the middleman out. So whereas before there were agents, or still that, agents or managers or whomever kind of facilitating or being the bridge between consumer and artist or creative, I think what OnlyFans does is remove that, right? Because they've created the back end financial system to where they break down whatever is to get to you and you get a deposit, right? And then you as the creator, whatever you're creating, be it PG or not so PG, you have full control of what you create and how you upload it. So I think it's definitely going to shift the roles in terms of how many people have say or have control as to the way the money kind of disperses and gets to the creators themselves.
Yeah.
What about caffeine? Do people have views on caffeine? Because that's an upload, isn't it? That's a new broadcast platform.
I haven't heard of that one. Caffeine.
Yeah, it came across my radar a couple of times. It's more for sort of gaming, entertainment, creative arts, but it's a broadcasting platform. It's one that sort of is sort of, I hear it from time to time, but I just don't know anybody who's taking it seriously. I just thought whether anybody on the panel knew anything about it.
I heard about it. Them and Twitch came to us. Them and Caffeine and Twitch came to us when we first started Versus to offer us an alternative to Instagram when they were noticing some of the issues we were having. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it does. A lot of the other platforms I'm learning really do live heavily in the gaming world. That world and what they they like their own space. Like they go in their space, close the door, headphones, goggles, whatever it is, and they just do their thing. But I've never personally used Caffeine. I've used Twitch before. It's cool. It again, a lot of the control we're seeing is being turned over to the creatives themselves to allow them to determine how they want to monetize their content. So it's interesting.
It's going to be an interesting few months when we look at what our new normal looks like and how brands and people utilize that to make money. Abby, as you said earlier about me and my stories, I am a bit obsessed with Adidas, and my main reason for being obsessed with Adidas, and I'm going to say the name wrong, Mo, so just bear with me. I don't know if I've got the book here actually. One of the presidents at Sony a couple of years ago got me to read a book called The Tanning of America, and it absolutely changed my life. And we were actually just coming out the other side of branding from PR and everything in between and becoming the fitting room, and it actually influenced so much of what we did with that. And it's written by, and this is where I go wrong though, is it Steve Stout? Steve Stout. It's Steve Stout. He's written this book, and in it he covers basically some of the biggest brand deals that were done in hip hop. So he talks about G-Unit and 50 Cent. He talks about, well, the main one that I became obsessed with was about the Run DMC in 1986. Putting Madison Square Garden and then taking off that shoe and putting in the air, and it became my Adidas. That is the legacy campaign that you still see now. What's it like working for a brand? Because I guess you guys have got this balance with your your Stormzy, the ones coming through, the cool kids now, well around for forever, but then you've got people like Run DMC who are absolute legacy artists and brands within their own right. What's that process like? Because that's a different kind of relevancy, because they're not always performing together, they're not always doing shows together. You guys bring them back to do specific brand activations for Adidas. How does that work?
Yeah, good question. I think it's it's not something that's frequently done. As you say, like a lot of people aren't active in that space anymore. I think particularly if you're calling out Run DMC, as I say, it's such a massive part of what we were and where we've come from. And I guess it is where like the first hip hop transition started with sport. It's not always easy, as I think we've referred to earlier, like working with talent doesn't just happen like that. You think, oh, this would be a great idea, this fits perfectly, let's go do it. Not that simple. And I think everyone on the panel will probably agree that that is the way. But I think when you position it in the right way with them, and it is like we would never plug and play them into every sort of brand activation. It's not the right thing. And it's like I think what's really interesting, and I don't think many people would know this, is that the majority of times that Brand DMC have come back together and done stuff is actually for the brand, because that is one of the most inspiring things as an employee of Adidas, that brings you, like, makes you remember why you're there and like where it all started and what you're doing every day. So I mean, I've had the pleasure of seeing them 4 times live, and that's only one of them was consumer facing. The 3 were internal. And that's just inherent to what the brand is. And probably for them, I think, is nicer because they're seeing how much this brand has grown, probably off the back of a lot of the amazing people they are. So it's sort of a win-win. So I think that, that's probably quite, not many people would know that or expect that of them. And they're amazing, and they just bring up that brand. So I think the process is a long one. But I think once you're part of the Adidas family, it's always something that can be revisited, contract or no contract. There's obviously some that are easier than others, and that's just the way of the world, and a lot of management side and things like that. But if you're approaching it with the background knowledge of where it's come from, and with the same passion that they started doing it from when they did. I mean, like we still work with Beckham now. At the time we started with him, God knows how many years ago, and he has been such an integral part of the design and the story and making that family what it is and making football what it is. So people like that are always really happy to be part of the brand because they still are, and they're part of that family. So I hope that answers it. Like there's no real process. I think I wish I could give you a formula of how that works, and similarly with who we now work with now and how we decide how to work with people, but it's so much on relationships. And there's a lot, I mean, I think I'm a lifer in this brand for 6 years, but I'm not. There's a lot of people who have stayed with our brand forever and had a 40-year career with them and are still there and don't plan on going anywhere. And that's kind of unheard of quite a lot, and something that when I first started, I became really aware of really quickly. I was like, wow, people just don't leave. And I think that is amazing because we have so much fun together, and it's obviously a great place to be. But I think it's also testament to, as the world develops and we change in technology and we change in the way we work and the different ways consumers receive things and how you go to market with a product, it's the same people doing it who are just evolving with the times because they care and have passion about it. And I think that probably comes through with the talent we work with as well. Like just because you worked on it 10 years ago doesn't mean you can't still be part of that conversation now. It's just knowing how it's evolved and moved through.
So if somebody is watching and they have got talent that they look after, that they believe is going to be the next big thing, and they wanted to pitch that talent to Adidas, what's the best way to do that? Know the brand stories, reach out to the entertainment team.
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. And I'm sure they already do, but like know your talent and know what they want to do. I think it's so much of that two-way relationship, like where rather than just coming in and being like, this is it, it doesn't need to be that packaged up. It needs to be raw. And I think you get the best things out of it when it's raw, and you can get the most creativity out of things when you're like, this is who I am. Like, this is what I want to do. This is what I believe in. How do we work together? And that comes back to the creator brand. I think that's probably where we get the most out of it. It's like, rather than being the polished diamond, like what is it that it's all about and that we want to get out of it, because you're always going to get so much more when you start at that ground roots point. And I think, Liv, you've probably had that quite a lot. It's like the more you know and the rawer you get, and the more you start at that point, the more you can build up.
I think because some brands that we work with now will say, oh, we want this influencer or this talent to post these exact words in the caption and we want to do this. And we sort of say to them, well, what's the point? Like, why are you using this person? They're just a mouthpiece. Surely the ideal situation is to sit talent down with brand and understand what both parties want, and then work out what the message, the narrative is going to be, and where actually, just because it works on Instagram doesn't mean it's going to work on their Facebook and their Twitter. And actually it's platform by platform, message by message, and fusing what everybody wants the results to be together. But a lot of brands still go with, here's the caption, this is exactly how we want you to take the picture, post it at this time, tag this and this, and that's the tick box almost for the board report.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, there's still elements of that. I mean, we're still in an age where you've touched on it earlier about needing that brand message, and that, you know, there's a fundamental point where we have to come back to the marketing side of it. But I think it's striking the balance between, like, okay, there's the job to do, there's that bit, but that's such a small percentage of like the bigger picture. Yeah. And if you let someone just be them, and then you get that emotional connection with their audience rather than it just being with us. Yeah. And I think that's a way that we'll probably see evolving a lot. It's the emotional connection over like what used to be a very like modelistic way of going about it. Now it's like coming back to like, who are the people, and then taking it from there.
And on that then, Pip, you know, the global success that both Vita Coco and Adidas have had, one of the things when people write to me, young people in particular, they say, oh, you know, I've come up with this really great company name and now I'm going to get a logo designed. And I always say, don't think that's the right way round. I know that that's what everyone sees, touches, feels and everything else. But I'm like, what's the story? What are you selling? What's the points of difference? Why, how are you making a customer believe that? If someone was getting ready to start a drinks brand now and they wanted to have, you know, the level of global success that Adidas has had in terms of becoming a household name brand and what Vita Coco did, what would you recommend to them?
I mean, I always use the word relevance. Where's the relevance? I think a lot of people spend a lot of time trying to find a white space. I know we've talked about this, Charlotte. You know, it's got to be completely and utterly brand new. It doesn't always have to be brand new, but it has to be different. And in my sector, I often use the example of Fever Tree Tonic. If somebody had come to me 10 years ago and said, I'm going to take on the world of Schweppes, I'd have said, are you sure? You're never going to succeed. And there's a brand that, you know, has gone to a valuation of 4 billion at one point, bigger than Britvic now, and just did it differently. But it did it differently by being very clear from the beginning of what its position was, what it wanted to stand for, and the values of the brand. And I think, you know, before you get involved in logos, branding, any of that, is just having a very, very clear business strategy. I mean, I come from a world where most of the businesses I work with, they run their businesses off one-page strategic plans that everybody contributes into, that everybody understands, and that is understandable. And it's very defined and it's kept simple. And those business plans then inform the positioning of the brand, values, what makes it different, all the things that you've just touched on. And then from there, once you know what you want your brand to stand for, the values of it, you know, how you're going to be different, how you're going to be relevant, and, you know, excuse my language, why consumers should give a shit about your brand, only then do you start working on looking at logos and names. I mean, obviously names are very, very relevant, and there's a million things you've got to think about. You know, is this a brand that you have aspiration to take globally? I mean, the world we live in now, to me, all brands are global. There aren't the days now where, I'm just going to stay a UK-centric brand, because we live in the world of shared global media. So, you know, there's a whole process to go through before you even get to logo, branding, logos and naming, from that perspective. But it all needs to ladder up to everything. We've touched on it all through this conversation. It's that authenticity, and authenticity comes from really understanding what's your positioning, what are the values of your business, what are your tones, what do you want to become famous for? When people talk about Adidas, they talk about they're famous for the originals. That is, I hope I'm not talking out of turn, Abby, but that's the thing that resonates with the world. You know, it's what's carried that brand through. Yes, there's a whole periphery of other things going on, but that's the mainstay. You know, what is it, if you're launching your new business, do you want to become famous for? When people ask about the fitting room, what do you want to be famous for? And you build the rest of your business around that, and that then informs your logo, your branding, with the whole values, tone piece around it. And also relatable to you, to the most important thing is your consumer. Your consumer is at the heart of everything, and there's no hiding from the consumer. And, it's who is your consumer? I think, some of the best brands are, I come across a lot of businesses are like, well, we want to be able to touch everybody. And I'm like, use your consumer like an onion, really focus in on your core consumer as you build your business in the first few years. If you're then lucky enough to be able to keep moving out, but there's always will continue to be a core consumer of any business. And how does your brand relate, and why is it relevant to that consumer, and how do you keep that consumer within your brand? Because the most important thing is that evolution as well, because you can be the best brand today and not the best brand the next day.
You have a lot of choice now. People very disposable.
Yeah.
Disposable brands. And just on from that, then, where Pip was just talking about that, and the brand culture values, coming out with such a bold name like Fuck Being Humble, how has that resonated with people when you say it? Like, when we were getting ready to do this week, Danielle and I had the conversation around curse words and, what the boundary was with different people. And I was like, well, most of the women that I work with say what they've got to say, and they say whatever words come out of their mouths, and you move forward. And I guess that's when we went to boost on Instagram this today, Bonnie put it up and it kept getting blocked, and it was because of the word fuck being in it. And we were like, oh shit, how are we gonna navigate through this but still get the brand name on it? What kind of, because I guess you've given your company a really authentic name that's true to you, that you believe in, but obviously in some parts and in some people's minds, that the word is a curse word as well, they find it offensive. What are the challenges that you've come across sort of living authentically true with your brand?
I mean, the obvious that I can't advertise, which is slightly annoying with a book coming out when I'd actually like to be targeting people.
Yeah.
I think I'm actually really proud, though, that I've grown an organic audience based off of the emotion and everything, all the content that comes through. In terms of problems or backlash, there's no surprise that there is always going to be somebody that has an opinion on it. I think for me, what I struggle with the most is people form an opinion before they've even engaged with the brand. So by choosing such a provocative name, I didn't make it easy for myself. I have people that just immediately dismiss my brand or things that I've done just purely on the name. And when I kind of reflect on that, of course, it makes me feel upset, because I've had some really, amazing things that have come out of building this community. But actually, I think in a very blasé way, one of the things I said to my sister, which she just laughed at because I was so nonchalant about it, was like, they're just not my audience, so I don't care. That's the truth of it. It's that I'm not going to please everyone. No brand pleases everyone. I actually got interviewed by The Times when I first started Foot Being Humble. I'd not even ran an event before. I hadn't really put a huge amount of content out, and because it was so pokey and, I suppose BuzzFeedy, noteworthy, I got interviewed. There was a double page spread, and no one actually I never had any media training, so it's an interesting interview, but no one actually told me not to read comments. And I remember reading the comments and being like, oh my God, everyone hates me, this is awful. But what I realised is that The Times aren't necessarily my audience, that's the truth of it. And I wrote an article on LinkedIn where I talked about the mission, I talked about the confidence gap, the study that shows that women will say they can do less in interviews, men will say they can do more. And when I wrote that article, I wrote it with a clickbait title, so why I started a self-promotion platform called Foot Being Humble. And 5,500 people read it around the world. People from all over the world were contacting me. Someone from the White House Communications Agency got in touch and was like, I love you need to come do a talk. But simultaneously, I had hate comments starting on this post, and it was like, oh, what have I unleashed? And I didn't think that hate comments existed on LinkedIn, but apparently they do. And so it's been
everywhere.
It's been a balancing act. I think, the reality is the people that I have helped, and the companies I've worked with, you know, I've worked with brands like Unilever, Google, Warner Music, big brands. If they're able to get on board with it, then surely there must be merit and, you know, proof in what I'm talking about. And if people can't handle the word fuck, then they're obviously not part of my audience or my community. So in a very I'm not bothered but I'm really bothered way, it's the kind of grave that I've set myself, and I have to embrace it. And I always laugh, my boyfriend says that my tombstone will read fucking relentless, and actually I think I couldn't have created a brand that suited my values in any other way. So I think I have to keep going with it. And someone said something to me last week that you shouldn't feel, I said, do I need to change my brand name because I can't advertise? Like, is this seriously going to affect me? And they just said, no, you shouldn't change who you are, and you shouldn't change your brand because of the parameters that Instagram is putting around me, or, you know, Facebook or whatever that is. And I'm really glad he said that to me, because it's true. And I know that really, but sometimes you need to hear it from other people.
I mean, Donald Trump is signing an executive order today, isn't he, against social media for Twitter trying to censor the conservatives and the fake news and whatnot. So it's going to be interesting as people, and I think that's one of the interesting things about OnlyFans is the fact that you're in that section, you can do what you like. There aren't those rules, limitations that you've got in kind of the mainstream channels at the moment. So if you wrote fuck, it wouldn't make, there's no difference on there, which I think those more indie platforms are going to have more of a space coming into the mainstream, because they are putting those restrictions in place. They are for the ones who want to live how they want to live without being told no.
And I think the reality is, I wouldn't have got a book deal. I wouldn't have worked with all these amazing people. I wouldn't have got a radio show and all these amazing things that have happened in literally the space of 18 months. Yeah. And it was a side hustle. So I've only just started going full time on it in March. So actually, all these things that have happened organically would not have happened if I'd have had a name called Self-Promotion Sisters or Chase Your Dreams. Like, it just would never have happened. So I'm going to stand by it until it lasts.
Steph, kids in the future will be reading about disruptive brands, and it'll be your brand that they'll be reading about in marketing books in the future, or whatever they're reading in the future. It won't be books, will it?
I don't know what it will be. And then I guess just on from that brand side, Mo, you've obviously negotiated and have been a part of some pretty big brand deals, and I saw you nodding with a lot of what Abby was saying about how they cultivate that community and how they influence and everything else. What, from a talent perspective and from you as a manager and as a partner, what are you, how do you decide what's right for your talent, and what opportunities are you guys now looking for with brands off the back of Versus, and what do you guys want next?
Swiss is a unique individual in that he sits in so many different pockets. So whereas I have other clients whose message or whose voice is very specific, and while in the back of their minds they're like, oh, I want to go do work with so-and-so, I'm kind of like, do you want to do work because it fits you, or you want to just be associated with them because they can help you be bigger, right? And sometimes that backfires because everything isn't for everyone, right? Yeah. You know, like with Swiss, like we've been fortunate enough to do business with a lot of big brands, but then there's a lot of brands who were bigger that we couldn't do business with because certain things just didn't align, you know? And even in the sense of like when Abby was talking about, and you even mentioned, there's some deals we've turned down because the messaging was so strong. And, you know, the one thing we notice with fans and even consumers is they know when you've been forced to type something because you've gotten a check or been asked to say it.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had one partner, and I mean, it was so detailed. We had to screenshot the story before we posted it to send them, for them to approve, to make sure everything was aligned how they would want it. Then recreate, because you know IG stories, once you leave it, you have to do it again and then go back in and recreate exactly what they've approved, color, alignment, everything, to then post. So this was like, I'm not doing this again. Tell them we're not working anymore. And that's a real conversation as a manager to have with a brand and say, hey, so we know you gave us a lot of money, but this is a lot. And some brands just know. They're like, listen, we know it's legal, it's not our fault. And obviously I have to play buffer and sit in the middle and make him feel comfortable, do a lot of that, middle person work. And then there's other brands who are just like, take it or leave it. And we've had to walk away from some really good deals because at that point, the brand voice was loud, or the message for them was more important than who we were. Like, they wanted to talk to our audience, but they wanted us to talk to our audience in their voice. And I was kind of like, that's not how that really works. Like, if we come together and sit and decide what the messaging looks like so everyone's happy, then great. But it's hard for me to speak on behalf of this global conglomerate in their voice to my fans. So then why are you in business with me? You already are who you are. Just speak to who you speak to and hope it sticks, right? So yes, I think, the brand space is a great space because, like Abby, we've been in business with, Reebok, who's a sibling to Adidas, for years, and we've had some great times with them, it's just like you get into family for real with these people. Like, there's executives at Reebok who's our children, my daughter and our children play together, so it's not just it's not as transactional as some people do think on the forefront. Like, there is a lot of community that does get built in these brand partnerships that live longer than the deal itself. And even like, there's some people who still do business with us today who I may have met 14, 15 years ago just because we stayed in relation and they changed jobs and just remembered what it felt like to be in our space and our energy and just that good feeling. So yes, I love the brand work we do. We've been really fortunate in that the deals that we have, brought to life and the activations we brought to life have been collaborative from A to Z. We've seen some really good stuff come.
And Liv, I know because we've worked together on brand stuff before, and the role that film plays within communications and marketing. I guess Zoom's, stock share price is like through the roof. I don't think they could have predicted what was to come and how much money they were going to make. And Instagram and Facebook, the delay to get an ad or a boost on Instagram and Facebook at the moment, what used to take 15 minutes is now 24 hours in some cases to get approval, which is crazy. It shows you how much money they're making. What do you think's next for film post this? Because I guess this taking it from what would have normally been, in a venue to us all being in our own homes, our own comfortable spaces. What do you think is going to come next?
So I think that we were already, prior to sort of lockdown, we were already heading in this direction with film. And I think that this has just like probably pushed it over the edge, because basically sort of cinema is in jeopardy, and it was before lockdown anyway, because of, Apple TV and Netflix and all of these kind of streaming platforms propping up, which is quite disheartening for filmmakers, because their dream is to have people be immersed in this world in a cinema without their phone in front of them or to be distracted. People spend years making films and you want someone's undivided attention for 2 hours, but it's just not what people necessarily want or have the capacity for. So I think, prior to lockdown, I was, watching sort of Netflix and Amazon do these like theatrical, like limited theatrical releases for some of the things that they were posting on their streaming platforms, to give the people an opportunity to watch it live in a different place than their sort of room. But since lockdown, I've been amazed that, the new Bond film that is being delayed, they didn't sell tickets at like an exponential price to watch it exclusively from your own sitting room and stream it to the world and create this, people were so desperate when it was meant to come out to have an escape from what was going on. Like, it was a really dark time, and I just feel like that was a lost opportunity. But I feel like potentially, there's just going to be way more experiences like that are localized even in homes, you know, whether they start setting up screens in more places and just beaming out, you know, premieres as they go live so you can watch it and multiple people can get involved. I mean, I hope that that will be the case, but we'll see.
Just to touch on, it's so funny you say that. When Trolls came out, my daughter, as disappointed as she was that she couldn't see it in the theater, actually built a theater in our home, like created tickets and all of this because she felt a way about missing the experience of going to the theater to watch Trolls. And I would have gone with her, but I probably would have been on my phone or sleeping. And I actually watched, because she made outside, and you wouldn't do that at the theater, so there was a bucket outside the bedroom and she made everything, and I actually watched Trolls in its entirety, fell in love, and was recommending Trolls to other people. So to your point, there was a missed opportunity there, because there are people recreating this go to the theater moment in their homes. And for that one, my daughter, she really just took it and ran it and made it a thing. So it's true.
Yeah, and theatre companies have been doing that as well. Like on stage performances have been beaming out a lot of their plays. And my friends, you know, they buy ice creams that they can eat then in the interval in their own home, and it's brilliant.
That's really interesting. I think people, the Bond in particular, because people, you're so right, people really wanted that film. And people were so unhappy. We were in this new world, and that would have brightened up so many households. Again, they would have paid so much money to stream that somewhere. That's really interesting. So we've actually completely ran over. So firstly, massive apologies. So I just want to do 3 really quick fire questions to each of you. So first up, name a brand that you truly believe puts customers first. Pip, we'll go to you.
I'm going to go Pret a Manger, always leading on innovation, consistency of brand, fantastic, customer service, amazing, open and there when I need it, and supported a lot of people during lockdown, and also showed amazing pivoting. So I don't know if any of you have been in Pret a Mangers in the UK, but they pivoted straight away. You can pick up milk there, butter, etc. They are always leading out on innovation.
Steph?
I'm going to probably say more of a community-based one, and it's UK-based, so people might not know about it, but it's called The Other Box, and it's a diversity and inclusion platform for anyone who's ever felt othered, and they run really interesting training courses for huge brands, and just, you know, it's in the name. All the content they produce is amazing, and it's just this constant looking out for people and their needs in a world where everyone's trying to be more diverse but not actually doing it. They're actually really putting what people need in their hands.
Okay, I haven't heard of that.
I checked them out, The Other Box.
I'm going to go and look at them tonight. Liv?
Yeah, Pip, you stole mine as well.
Oh, sorry, we'll share it.
But I'll just add to that, because also they do a lot for homeless people, and I used to work in Covent Garden, and I would watch this homeless woman go in every day and speak to the staff, and they'd give her a cup of coffee every morning, and I worked there for 18 months, and by the time that I finished, she was behind the counter working there, which I just think is brilliant.
That's incredible. Mo?
Oh, this is a good one. I'm literally here like, I think one, and I'm mixing it up, I'm gonna kick myself, but one of the delivery services, maybe I'll leave the name off now, they actually were waiving delivery charges for all customers, and then donating a portion of the orders to essential workers. So I thought it's in the sense that just during a time when I think delivery was a little questionable, because you didn't just order food, but then to still give a portion of what people did still order to the essential workers. And even there was one advertisement where I think they were matching, so every meal you order, they would give a meal to an essential worker, and just seeing it up week to week on how they wanted to give back, I thought was really cool.
That's really cool. Really cool. Abby?
Mine is massively with marketing head on, so I apologise. But in recent years, I think what Spotify have done in terms of like personalising their brand and everything, like the humour of it, I just, every time they do something new, I love it, whether it's like the names on the billboards, everything like that. And I think it's so, everyone's obsessed in marketing right now about making human connection. And that for me, I know it's a marketing campaign and I know it's done for a reason, but for me, that really worked. And I'm jealous in a way. So yeah, Spotify.
They did it really well, really well. As you go through the ranks of becoming successful and get further up, what should people remember? Like Mo touched on earlier about being polite. What else should, because I think success goes to people's heads and people's perception of overnight success. What should people never forget? Pip, come back.
Stay humble. We all started somewhere. And as you rise, keep thinking about giving back. You know, you have support on your way up. Help the people that are coming up behind you. So stay humble.
I agree on the being humble, despite what my name might say. Try and be relatable. I think, again, like the reality is for lots of people, no matter what you grow up and end up to be, you know, I came from a family in the north of England with no contacts. You know, I've worked super hard to get all the contacts and do all the amazing things, but I don't think I had huge advantages or like things that happen. I think that's staying personal and relatable to people is always going to be something people connect with.
Liv?
So I think often we forget how hard other people work and don't quite get their success. That's not to say that if you have success you didn't deserve it, but I think quite a lot of it is down to luck, and I think it's just worth always remembering that people can work as equally as hard as you and just never have the right opportunities.
No?
I read a quote once that said, be who you needed when you were growing up. To Pip's point, you know, like if there was something that was lacking on your end, you know, where you needed it, definitely try and fill that void, because you know it was needed because you yourself needed it, and just try and be helpful as possible to others on their way up.
Avi?
I think a bit of an amalgamation of what everyone said, but for me it's just stay being you. And I think that comes from a place where it's like, as you get into more leadership roles, you're expected to be a bit more authoritative and perhaps be a bit more confrontational. I mean, I'm not a confrontational person and I never will be, and I think don't change you just because you feel like you should. Find a way to do that exact role as you, and I think that's one thing that I've massively would hope my younger self would have done and I can continue to do.
Okay, and you've just taken me on to my next question, which is a real cliched one, but it's one that people always ask, and I think for young women in particular, like you guys have all done incredible things, and I feel like no one's even at a peak. Everyone's very much like working through. When I look back at what I would tell my younger self, so many different things to what I thought I knew and what I thought the world was going to be like, let alone being self-employed. So what would you tell your younger self? I know we've got some younger ones listening today. Pip?
We'll start with the oldest one, me. What I would tell all of you guys is no such thing as a bad question. I think often we are too shy to ask the questions, and what I've learned is surround yourself with an amazing network. You weren't put on this world to know all the answers. Have a great network around you, and that network will support you as you go through your levels of your career and hopefully to your final success if you get there.
Steph?
Totally agree on that one. Don't let yourself get pigeonholed. It's something I've definitely felt throughout my career. People telling me things that I should or shouldn't do, or that my skills are more suitable to that, or introverts, extroverts, all the labels that people try and throw at you. No one should ever take away your right to experience something and figure out what you stand for and what your purpose is and what you want to do in life. So the more things you do and try out, the better you'll end up doing something that you actually are really proud of.
Liv?
Yeah, it's basically just an accumulation of what they both said, which is brilliant. In that I wish I'd forced myself sooner into more uncomfortable situations, because you learn the most then, and you, like, it's great to mess up. Like, it's the most brilliant thing. Like, I actually quite enjoy messing up because I'm like learning something. But you never have the confidence to do that when you're younger. But I think if you just force yourself to, you'll get confidence sooner, and you'll be better off for it when you're older.
Mo?
I'd say don't be so hard on yourself. I think that was one of the things for me coming up. Like, I'm so tough on myself unnecessarily. Well, necessarily because I know what I'm capable of, but unnecessarily in the sense that I would really be beating myself up, you know, over just things I didn't know, but then expected myself to know in order to continue this perfect thing that, you know, everyone sometimes encourages you to be indirectly. So just definitely don't be so hard on yourself. Mistakes are okay. That's how you learn.
Abby?
Yeah, really similar to pretty much everyone said. I think I would say failure is not as scary as you think. I think I was like, being young me was really scared of failure, and I'd let it affect me for the next month to come and think about it all the time and have the horrible feeling in my stomach, when actually every single one of those, I think Liv and Mo, you both said it, like, you learn from them more than anything, and I wouldn't know what the hell I'm doing now if I hadn't got that wrong. So yeah, failure is not scary. It's actually just a learning platform like everything else.
Charlotte, can I just have one last one, just because probably a lot of people on the call will be thinking about, do I do my own thing? Never look back and say why, is my advice. I would say, what is the worst that can happen? It goes wrong, you'll pick yourself up again, something else out there for you. Don't ever be left wondering, just always give it a go.
When I was getting ready to start PR and everything between before we rebranded, and I had no money, and my dad said to me, the worst that happens here is you have to move home and you start again. That's it. What, wouldn't you rather that than in 10 years time going, why the hell didn't I do that? It's always stayed with me. When we hit COVID and they wanted to panic, I was like, okay, we can do this. It's so out of our control. What will be, behave like a good person, try and do all the right things, try and help as many people as possible, and be mindful of people that are in a lot worse situations than you. And just try it every day to keep moving forward. Just little wins was what me and my girlfriends were calling it. And we also talk about fail fast at TFR as well, because I'm like, I don't care if you fuck up. Let's just learn from it and go again. It's not that deep. It's not that catastrophic in what we do. But thank you. That was really, really great. Like, I know most of you, now I know a little bit more. Really enjoyed that. We have, for everybody watching, we have filmed it. I know a couple of people have said that they've had to leave. So we will be editing and setting so everybody can watch these brilliant women back. I just also want to say a quick thank you to everybody that's joined us this week. So Vanessa, Francois, Kylie, Bianca, yesterday Aisha, Gabby, Chelsea, Ada and Khadija, and then today the brilliant Abby, Mo, Liv, Steph and Pip. I think we've helped lots of men and women around the globe over the last 3 days, and I think as you get, as for me, as I got older and self-employed and everything that COVID has thrown, it's really made me reassess kind of what I want to do and my brand purpose and what TFR represents, and bringing together and the feedback that we've had the last few days from people who've said, right, I'm registering my business, I've just gone on to GoDaddy and I've got a website and I'm now going on to do this, to feel like we were able to bring together a group of women that have made other people action things that they've been, panicked about or nervous about doing. I can honestly say it's one of the best feelings ever. So thank you. I'm really, really, really appreciative of everybody that's given up that time this week. We tried to stay in time, but failed miserably. And thank you, Danielle in New York, for coming on board and being the partner and bringing women through this week. I think we have, in terms of inclusion, we worked really hard across the 3 days to make sure that we had represented our values as two women running our own agencies. So yes, just want to say a big thank you to everybody. It's been amazing.
Yes. Thank you. No, it was definitely very informative just hearing you all speak from a
just from a different side of things, because I'm in the beauty world here, but it was great to have you all. It was so great to be a part of this with the fitting room. I hope that once this is all over and behind us, I can make my way to the UK and meet you guys in person. And definitely cheers to more of these type of moments and spaces. And I feel like, even though we're limited right now with how we do things, I think, there's still the power of networking and creating special spaces like this for women of color too. So I think that it was you who kicked it off and really initiated, like you took the initiative to reach out to the Bonita Project and really, came up with this idea. And I'm so grateful for that. Just know that, please, from the bottom of my heart. And it's been an incredible 3 days, like Khadija said. Thank you.
Oh, yeah, I've just seen that. Amazing. Well, we'll be sending out emails with all the content for people to watch back, and we'll also put people's social media handles on there if you want to go and find people and carry on having a conversation. And have the best weekend, and thank you, ladies. You are brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thanks, everyone.